His first round matchup with the Nuggets is Saturday at 5:30 on ABC. The Dodgers are off today. They need some time off to regroup. The Dodgers are 4-6 in their last 10 games and were shut out Wednesday by Washington. The Dodgers start a 3-game homestand Friday against the New York Mets. The Angels, a half game out of first place in the AL West, are at Tampa Bay today. The Angels are 9-9 under new manager Ron Washington. Washington is trying to lead the Angels to their first winning season since 2015. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Tavis Smiley.
And I'm Compton Mayor Emma Sharif.
You have no doubt been hearing promos and expert conversations on our various weekday shows and downloading details at KBLA1580.com about our climate justice campaign, which is now in full effect.
The city of Compton is pleased to partner with KBLA Talk 1580 to celebrate Earth Day 2024 as we serve, share, and help our city shine.
And KBLA Talk 1580 is just as excited to join the city of Compton as we broadcast live and bring our KBLA delegation with us to help clean and beautify our community, and you are invited to join us.
Come meet us on Saturday, April the 20th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in Compton as we fan out to clean up our city.
The first 50 KBLA listeners to hit our website at KBLA1580.com will receive a free KBLA tee when you join us on Saturday morning, April 20th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in Compton. Now, no show, no shirt, but sign up at KBLA1580.com right now to help us clean up Compton as part of Earth Day 2024.
We will see you on Saturday, April the 20th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at 212 West Cypress Street in the city of Compton to do our part for Earth Day 2024.
We are KBLA Talk 1580, caring about the climate, caring about the community, cleaning up Compton.
Lord, it's been overdue. Got to get back to the Windy City for some funky little sweet home blues. Meet me in Chicago. Baby, I'll show you around. Meet me in Chicago. Let me take you downtown. I've covered every nook and cranny. I've been all over the world. Nothing better than to walk downtown with a sweet home Chicago girl. Meet me in Chicago. Up and down Halsted Street. Meet me in Chicago. Meet me in Chicago. Get yourself something to eat.
Buddy Guy on Tavis Smiley. And sounding good. Love me some Buddy Guy. In this hour, longtime architecture critic Lee Bey joins us with an update on the Obama Presidential Center, under construction now on the south side of Chicago. There has been significant controversy around the site of the 19-acre campus in historic Jackson Park. The project scheduled now to be completed by spring 2026. We shall see. But we'll download you right now on the progress of what's being planned now that we're joined by longtime architecture critic Lee Bey. Lee, how are you today?
Doing well, my friend. How about you?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. It's good to hear your voice. Good to have you on. And I'm glad we got an hour to talk about a few things here regarding architecture, not just in Chicago, but we'll talk about that bridge in Baltimore and all the foolishness. People suggesting that the bridge fell because of DE&I. I literally heard Wes Moore say yesterday, the governor of Maryland, I ain't got time for foolishness. And he didn't even respond to that particular question. But the fact that people would even make an argument like that a bridge fell and people died because of DE&I is insane to me. But I love architecture, and I'm delighted to have you on to talk about it. Let me just start for those in the national audience who have not been following this per se. That is to say, the library on the south side. I mentioned moments ago that this was initially rooted in some pretty serious controversy. Remind the audience or share with the audience what that controversy was when this thing was first suggested.
Well, the biggest controversy probably is the location that was selected, which is in Jackson Park right across, if you know Chicago, from the Museum of Science and Industry, right where the kind of Hyde Park, predominantly white liberal University of Chicago neighborhood, and Woodlawn, predominantly black neighborhood, kind of where they meet. It's a historic park by Frederick Law Olmsted, and there's a lot of angst, even now, still lawsuits settled and potential new ones being filed. Probably won't go anywhere over the building of that site.
And what's the protestation about? What are the grievances?
Well, the grievances are that they could have picked another site, that this is a historic park. I mean, Jackson Park, it's a nationally known historic park, not unlike in terms of prestige, Grant Park, in Chicago, downtown, or even it's in a class, in a way, of even Central Park in New York. I mean, it's
let me cut in right quick for those who don't know Chicago, but you saw all those Bulls championships. That's always in Grant Park where they have those celebrations. It's also the place where Obama went the night he was elected, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Grant Park is.
Yep.
But Jackson Park is close to Hyde Park, where his political and educational roots are, in terms of him teaching at University of Chicago, and not too far from where he did, from other parts of the South Side, a little further south, where he did his early organizing. And of course, maybe 2 miles from where Michelle Obama was raised. So there's a reason why they picked that site.
Yep. How did the former president now, and the former first lady, navigate the controversy? And there are a lot of black folk who are upset about this. How did they navigate the controversy around this son of Chicago coming back home to build this presidential library, but people are pushing back against him, born of the location they chose? How did he navigate that controversy? To your mind, at least. Yeah.
It was a tricky walk, but they did well. I mean, obviously, because the thing is being built.
Yeah.
There's another part of the controversy, which is the Woodlawn neighborhood, again, predominantly African American, wanted a community development, a community benefits agreement. They're fearful that this $700-800 million project could drive up real estate prices, which it kind of almost is, but those things were happening beforehand. And they wanted something out of it. They didn't want to be displaced. So for that part of it, the president, former president will come back to Chicago and basically say, you know me, I'm not going to leave you in the lurch over all this. He's also got Valerie Jarrett, which you might remember, another daughter of Chicago who worked in his administration, who, for better or for worse, sat down and heard and listened to these complaints. While on the other side, the location side, that becomes really a law question. Can they build on public land? How can they build on public land? That kind of thing. So the lawyers kind of took care and fought that part.
Yeah, I don't think these lawsuits are over, but to your point, it's being constructed. And so the Obama Library, the Obama Presidential Center, to be more exact, is tracking toward completion. We're talking with longtime Chicago architecture critic, Lee Bey, about that and a great deal more. I've got questions for Lee about the center, more questions in that regard. We'll talk about this bridge in speaking of architecture, this bridge in Baltimore that folk on the right now are blaming its collapse on DE&I, which is completely stuck on stupid, as far as I'm concerned. We'll talk about the Chicago skyline, which I think, I get in trouble every time I say this, but I like the Chicago skyline better than New York. That's just me. We can debate that. A lot more to talk about in this hour with Lee Bey when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Hey y'all, Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler. I'm Cookie Serratos, and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze fruit-on-the-go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Call Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@kbla1580.com. That's advertising@kbla1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got your black.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and longtime architecture critic Lee Bey. So, Lee, speaking of the Obama Presidential Center, this is radio, obviously, and so we can't see this. We can't see the renderings. But give me in the audience some sense, as best you can, as what's going to ultimately appear on this 17, 18, 19-acre site.
Well, the largest thing, the most dominant thing, and you can see it now, is the Presidential Center's museum, which is a 235-foot tall tower, which is obviously prominently on the site. There's also a forum building. There's, for instance, towards the southern end of the site, there is like a community athletic center called Home Court. So there's a collection of these buildings, but there are also gardens planned, park space planned. The idea, at least, and we'll see what it turns out to be, is that the park space that is lost from this is that they begin to put some of it back. There was a road that once ran on the eastern side of the property. That road will disappear and be replaced by parkland and garden space. So the idea is that it'll occupy garden space, park space, but it'll also add some too.
Yep, and none of us are surprised who know Barack Obama that he built a sports complex with a basketball court in it for him and his friends to play basketball. An official NBA-sized court is inside this building called Home Court. So the president will now have his own gym He ain't got to go to what's it called? East West Gym? Is that it? The East West Gym in Chicago?
Maybe East Bank Club.
East Bank Club. Yeah. He ain't got to go there no more. He can go to his own court. Yeah, when this is built, I ain't mad at him. We should all have the resources to build our own NBA size court to play basketball whenever we want to. Again, I ain't mad at the former president for that. The question that you raised earlier that I want to come back to is what impact ultimately this is going to have on the neighborhood. On the one hand, you have to celebrate the fact, again, that this son of Chicago is coming back home to build this presidential center. On the other hand, one cannot ignore the concerns of the surrounding community, and one would think that, at least financially, it would have a positive impact on the surrounding community. It's going to raise, again, if you're a property owner, it's good for you. It's raising the value of your property. And I would think that whatever surrounds it would benefit from increased spending as visitors come into that area to visit this museum in the years to come. But you tell me, on balance, whether or not the people in the surrounding communities think that the impact on this community will be positive or negative in the future.
Well, that all depends on a couple of things. It depends on the city's response to this investment, right? I mean, there's a street, 63rd Street, as famous as 47th Street in terms of Chicago, core Chicago streets that are ours, that belong to Black folk, right? And 63rd Street has taken a lot of hits over the past decades. Was almost vacant from Stony Island, which abuts this presidential center, all the way past Cottage Grove and beyond. Those spots are beginning to be filled in. It's up to the city urban planners, getting with developers to kind of restore, to take the advantage of that, to restore more parts of 63rd Street outside of the presidential library, obviously, but can feed into it. There are a lot of vacant lots, residential vacant lots in Woodlawn, although they're beginning to be expensive and dry up now. How the city moves in with affordable housing that it builds or incentivizes, all of that, becomes really important. When it comes to the library itself, is it an asset? That's a matter of programming, right? To make sure that there's enough programming there that's there for the public. I mean, the center that we talked about, the home court center, we joke about it being his basketball court, but it's intended to be something that the community can use and have gatherings in. Same with the parks and open space they're planning. It'll be on the grounds of the presidential center, but the idea is that it'll be open to the public. So that's where it really becomes. Without aggressive programming, and without the city saying, "Hey, listen, let's see if we can take a layup, handoff from this presidential center to do some things equitably in Woodlawn along 63rd," without those things happening, then it becomes an exclusive club for whomever. Yeah. But with those things happening and the community pushing for those things to happen, then it has the potential to really become this asset that they want it to be.
Yep. I don't know if you know anything about this, Lee, but he's been on my program a few times, and he's a personal and dear friend of mine. But Harry Lennox, the great actor from Chicago, is working on a project not too far from this presidential center. You know about this project as well?
Oh yeah, he took an old warehouse building on Cottage Grove, west of there, but not terribly far away. This is good. These cultural links that places like Woodlawn used to have slowly beginning to come back, and that's good to see. So I'm excited about what Brother Lennox is doing there, because it, along with perhaps I don't if you're familiar with Theaster Gates' work, sure. A little bit to the along 55th, so I guess it's a little not too far from there. These kind of artistic and cultural interventions coming back into the community are great, and the library would do well. The presidential center would do well to kind of play off these things and create relationships with these places.
I'm blanking on her name right now, but before I do that, though, let me just say again how much I love Harry Lennox. I'm delighted that this cultural space that he's building there, again, not too far from the Obama Presidential Center. So these Black folk in Chicago are doing their thing, as they always have. And speaking of Black folk in Chicago, I'm blanking on her name right now, but I had her as a guest on this program a few months ago when she ascended to the position. But the head of the AIA, the first time ever, is a black woman. You know what I'm talking about? She's based in Chicago there. And
Uh,
her name will come to me. I'll find it. Miles, we'll find it.
it's it's Kim.
Is it Kim? Yeah, we'll find her name. But I want
It,
to just, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Lee.
no, I'm embarrassed because I know her and I'm blanking out
No,
on her last name.
we'll find it. We'll
So
find it. The head of the AIA. And here's the point. The AIA is the institution for architects in this country. And they've been around for hundreds of
yes,
years, and they have never had an African American woman lead the AIA. And it was a really, really big deal a few months ago when it was announced that she'd be Kim Dowdell. Kim Dowdell is her name.
Dowdell. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
So a shout out to Kim and all those listening on VON who know Kim in Chicago right now. Tell her we gave her a shout out today as the sister who is now the head of AIA. And that's a really big deal. When you think about, and I'll get Lee's take on this in a moment, when you think about how white, how lily white, and how white male the world of architecture is in this country, for a black woman to now be leading the AIA is a really big deal. And the fact that she's at a firm there in Chicago, again, is just another statement about what you can do in Chicago. But when I saw that news break a few months ago, I invited her on this program. We had an amazing conversation. If you missed it, again, her name is Kim Dowdell. Check out the podcast of that conversation with this sister who's actually from Detroit. As I recall, but lives in Chicago and with a major firm there. But for her to have ascended to the leadership of this institution, this organization, after all these many years, is a really big deal. Which leads me down this particular path, Lee Bey. I want to talk in a moment about how you fell in love with architecture. I love architecture, as I said at the top of the hour. I'm a big fan of it, and here's a funny story. When I was in college at Indiana University, grew up in the Midwest, spent a lot of time in Chicago, got tons of friends there. But when I was a student at Indiana University, it just so happened that my roommate and the guy who I pledged with, we were online together. His name is Kai, last name Blackburn. His father is a well-known, God rest his soul, father was a well-known black architect. He designed the Freedom Center, the Underground Railroad Museum in Cincinnati, and some other things that Walter Blackburn did during his lifetime. But his son, Kai Blackburn, was my college roommate. And I hadn't ever even really thought about architecture. I mean, obviously, I'm not stupid. I'm a student at IU, but hadn't really, paid attention to architecture or black architects or anything like that. But when your roommate has a father who's a very well-known and famous architect, you get into it. And before I knew it, Lee, I had subscribed to Architecture Digest. And all these years later, I still subscribe to Architecture Digest because I love the field. I love the passion, the energy. I love the beauty of it. And as fate would have it, I ended up designing a house here in L.A., the office building that I sit in right now, I helped to design. We built this building from the ground up where I sit every day and run my company, and my studios are in this building. But that is how much I fell in love with architecture. I say all that to say I'm curious as to your backstory as a black man, how you fell in love with architecture and much less become an architecture critic.
Well, it's an interesting story. I mean, the first part of it is, living in Chicago, as you know, as when you visited, in any great city in America, but especially Chicago, it kind of comes in a mother's milk. You go downtown, particularly I'm 58, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s, but you go downtown and there's Sears Tower, there's John Hancock building, these world famous buildings, and they're just there for you. They're just there to look at, right? And then out in the neighborhoods, I mean, these beautiful limestone buildings, residential buildings in Bronzeville along King Drive. And it kind of gets into the skin. My introduction to architecture actually was through my father, who was a layman, worked for Reynolds Aluminum, who just liked architecture. And he would take me around, and we would look at buildings, and I would ask him questions, and he would answer what he knew, and that kind of planted the seed. Now, when I first got into journalism and then made my way to the Sun Times, I covered crime. In fact, I was on your show like 30 years ago, your old TV show, talking about Girl X.
Oh yeah,
if you remember that. And well, right around that time that we talked, we got a new editor who liked architecture. I at the time had been covering, gangs, controversy, special investigations, all kinds of stuff, and I wanted to change. So I asked for this new architecture beat, not thinking I would get it. I thought I would get something else, but it was just asking for this beat because they had no formal training in it. Asking for this beat would let the editor know that I want to do something else. He says, you write well. The beat is yours. And that's how it began. And I wrote about preservation in Bronzeville, and I like the politics of Chicago. So the political movements that either created a building, preserved a building, or knocked down a building. I kind of got all into that, and the readers responded to it, have responded to it. I left the field, came back 20 years later, if you can believe that, and it was able to pick up right back at the Sun-Times, writing about architecture once more.
I'm laughing because you started writing about crime yesterday. It just so happens we had Kim Foxx on the program yesterday for an hour, talking about her tenure as state's attorney there in Chicago. And what happens next was an amazing conversation with this first black woman to lead the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. This is the sister who was involved in the Jussie Smollett case. If you missed our conversation with Kim Foxx yesterday, I encourage you to check out the podcast. It's an amazing conversation with her. And speaking of Chicago, to have started out being born in Cabrini Green, and end up being the state's attorney, the first black woman to have that position. It was quite a story. It is quite a story, and I encourage you to check out the podcast of our dialogue with Kim Foxx yesterday in case you missed it. But I'm still laughing that a brother went from covering crime to covering architecture. How did you? I didn't know that's part of the backstory, Lee, but that's quite a jump, man, from crime to architecture.
Oh yeah, it's a leap. Although some architecture is a crime. Get a chance to talk about that. But I was a young father then, and had to feed the kids, right? Yeah. And so it's amazing what you can do when you got that at your back. To your point that some architecture is a crime, I'd say amen to that. I see some edifices, some structures, and I say that was a bad idea when they thought about it. So when you write a piece and you're not so kind to this architecture that is in fact a crime, how do people respond to that? Particularly those who are associated with the project. To be honest. Oftentimes, the developers are always mad. Why did you write that?
Right.
Oftentimes, the architect will call and off the record and say, you're right. We tried to do this better and they wouldn't let us. So there's that. The readers like it because when you take shots at people, particularly if you do it with some humor, it's entertaining. So they kind of like it too. It's fun. I don't get a chance to do it, to take shots. There isn't as much bad architecture being built in Chicago now as there was in the 90s when I first started this, where you get these kind of margarine-colored concrete buildings that were popping up out of nowhere north of downtown with giant parking bases at the base, and you think parking lots at the parking spaces at the base. You think, what the heck is this? Now, it's a bit better. Yep. The battle is preserving the good stuff oftentimes.
Our guest is I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Finish your point, Lee. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No. That was it. That was it.
We're talking in this hour to architecture critic Lee Bey. We started out talking about, and we'll circle back to this, President Obama. Former President Obama is building the Obama Presidential Center. It's under construction right now. It's tracking toward completion. And just trying to get a sense of what is going to be on that site in Jackson Park, historic Jackson Park, when they finish this project, the controversy notwithstanding. When we come forward, I do want to talk about the Chicago skyline, since I've got Lee on the line. And we'll talk about that bridge in Baltimore. Wes Moore ain't having it. The governor of Maryland is upset and disappointed with this suggestion that it was DE&I that brought that bridge down. A great deal more to cover with Lee Bey when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The University of Michigan's Poverty Solutions is releasing a report that shows home values in Detroit have risen by $3.9 billion since the city declared municipal bankruptcy. The report also shows that black homeowners saw their housing wealth increase by $2.8 billion. University professor Jeffrey D. Mornoff says from their findings, wealth has increased a lot and fairly equitably. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan says Detroiters who stayed in the city are seeing benefits in the form of housing wealth. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's proposed plan to borrow over $1 million to pay for housing and other development has hit a roadblock. The black mayor's allies delayed a full city council vote on the measure. Mayor Johnson's goal is to borrow $250 million a year through 2028 to fund efforts to expand affordable housing and boost small businesses and nonprofits. A vote now could be held as soon as Friday. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Thousands of crashes occur in highway work zones every year, putting friends and family in danger. Remember, when you see a work zone, slow down and pay extra attention. Be work zone alert and go safely, California, from Caltrans and the California Office of Traffic Safety.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Lakers coach Darvin Ham is facing his most difficult challenge since he was hired by the franchise in 2022. Ham is trying to come up with a game plan that will help the Lakers beat the defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets for the first time in almost 2 years. The Lakers have not beaten the Nuggets since December 16, 2022. Game 1 of the Lakers' first-round matchup with the Nuggets is Saturday at 5:30 on ABC. The Dodgers are off today. They need some time off to regroup. The Dodgers are 4-6 in their last 10 games and were shut out Wednesday by Washington. The Dodgers start a 3-game homestand Friday against the New York Mets. The Angels, a half game out of first place in the AL West, are at Tampa Bay today. The Angels are 9-9 under new manager Ron Washington. Washington is trying to lead the Angels to their first winning season since 2015. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you tired of being stuck without internet access? Connect and go with LA County Library. It's simple. Visit your local LA County Library location and borrow a hotspot for free to get Wi-Fi wherever you are.
Yeah, yo, come on. Pick up the drum.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Helping to broaden your political and moral imagination with our 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though. Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
More of Tavis Smiley and Lee Bey right now, who is a longtime architecture critic with the Chicago Sun-Times. And we've been talking, in case you've just tuned in, about the Obama Presidential Library, a Presidential Center. I got to start calling it by its correct name, the Obama Presidential Center. Not it is a presidential library, but it's called the Presidential Center. In historic Jackson Park in Chicago, it's tracking toward completion, and just trying to get a sense of what we're going to be visiting in the years to come when we head to Chicago to see what the former president and first lady have built. And what the legacy the legacy that will be extended because of what they are building in historic Jackson Park. Speaking of heading to Chicago, I'm going to Chicago. I'll be there. I love Chicago. I'm always looking for any excuse to go to Chicago. One of my favorite American city, as my friends know. But I'll be there this summer, Lee, as the rest of the world will be. Many of us will be for the Democratic National Convention. And if you're coming to Chicago or going to Chicago this summer, for the DNC, when it comes to, I'll put you on the spot here, when it comes to taking a tour of Chicago, an architecture tour of Chicago, give me 3, 4, 5 things that you think people ought to see while we're in Chicago this summer for the convention.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Let me see. So much, obviously downtown, which you'll see, obviously, because the United Center isn't that far from downtown.
Right.
I would say, although I'm a South Sider and wrote a book about the South Side, architecture of the South Side, I'd say get a chance to see some of the West Side architecture. There's been a lot built. If you were here in '96 for the DNC, then it's particularly the parts of the West Side that are, within a mile of downtown, mile and a half of downtown. It's a completely different place now where, new buildings, office buildings, residential towers. Get out to Austin, a black neighborhood, predominantly black neighborhood on the far West Side near Oak Park. There's a subset of Austin called Austin Village. Some of the best late 1800, early 1900s architecture you'll ever see. Looks like a New England town that got lost.
Mm-hmm.
I would say make your way up and down King Drive, beginning, just south of downtown, and going out to Garfield Boulevard, 55 or 30 blocks away or so, and see these great historic gray stone buildings. The house that Ida B. Wells, once had.
Oh yeah.
And on and on and on. Those are good places to start.
Yep. You're a Chicago native, so I can probably guess what you're going to say, but let me ask anyway. When it comes to the Chicago skyline, what's your read on it, and is it better than the New York skyline?
Yeah, I'm going to say it is, at the risk of offending my New York brothers and sisters. It is, it has a lot of things going for it that created that, right? So there's the lake, so it's a 3-sided downtown. So if you're coming from the South Side, especially down Lakeshore Drive, the skyline just unfurls in front of you in a way that few cities do, and so that's great. But it's also a compact downtown. So it has the lake on one side, and then the river wraps around it in a way. So architects and engineers had to make the most of what's a relatively small space for central business district. So you go up, you go high, right? And then to do that, you have to have the structural manpower, not manpower, but certainly horsepower, to build a tall building. And that of course brings ingenuity into the mix. And then lastly, the political piece. For most of its existence, Chicago, particularly the 20th century into the 21st, Chicago has had mayors that cared about downtown. They saw maybe almost too much, almost to the neglect of the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But they felt that investment downtown would lift the whole city. So the Dailies, both the Old Man and the Richard M. Daley, Rahm Emanuel to an extent, all these people put investments into downtown, encouraged developers and commercial interests to do so, but also built Millennium Park, the Riverwalk, all these kind of things. All of this makes this city's downtown a good one.
Yeah, a couple of things popped in my head while you were talking. Let me process through them right quickly. Number one, when you said they had to go high. Since we were talking about the Obamas earlier, you said the word high. My mind went straight to Michelle Obama. Remember that line, when they go low, we go high? In her famous speech. I'm still not sure I agree with Michelle on that one. Sometimes when they go low, you got to get low with them. But I understand what she was. It's aspirational. I understand what she was trying to say. That when they go low, we go high. It got applause, but I'm not sure, Michelle Obama, that I'm with you on that one. Not all the time. When they get low, sometimes you got to get down with them. As my granddad once told me, when you get down, but he's how do you put it, Tavis? You got to get down where you get mad. You got to get down right where you get mad. So when they go low, sometimes you got to go low with them. With all due respect to the former First Lady Michelle Obama, that popped in my head when you mentioned they had to go high for some reason. Since we're talking about the Obamas in Chicago, the other thing that popped in my mind, though, speaking of architecture, I want to work my way into your book about architecture on the South Side for one particular reason. Because when we think about the South Side of Chicago, it too often gets maligned for all the obvious reasons, as you know, in the national press. What I love about your book is that it went into the architecture, the beauty of the South Side. And it's not just the South Side of Chicago, but all around the country. There are black neighborhoods that have amazing and beautiful architecture that for years have been overlooked, not given the respect that these buildings and institutions deserve. And so that's why I love your book. It reminds us that even in black spaces, there is beauty, there's architectural genius, artistic genius, and I want to talk about that in just a moment here. But before I do that, looking at my clock here, I want to just say, speaking of architecture, that as long as he lived, I would never come to Chicago without going to the Johnson Building to have lunch with John H. Johnson. I miss him dearly all these years later. I was honored to be one of the 3 eulogists at his funeral there in Chicago, of course. But I love that Johnson building. What I love more is the story of how he got that building built. I mean, segregation and racism was so strong when he became the first and only black person to own a high-rise tower right there in Michigan, with all those beautiful structures. But I just want to shout out and just, once again, just give a brief tribute to John H. Johnson, not just for what he did with regard to Ebony and Jet, but what he did putting a black-owned tower on that main street on Michigan, that avenue in Chicago, Lee Bey.
Oh, that's one of the great Chicago stories. I mean, as I tell people, as Central Station, this was like our Ellis Island, where the Illinois Central brought us up from down south to Chicago. I mean, imagine, as I say in the book, you're on a plow or you're stuck in some kitchen down south. You catch the train to Chicago, and within a day's time, you're standing in what was then the 9th largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. People say, well, why black folks come to Chicago? Why they come to the north? That's the reason why. Yep. So as that building at Roosevelt, Michigan is coming down, yep, closing out and beginning to come down, what that building wrought is a kind of embodied in Johnson's building, designed by black architect John Matusami, local man. That's right. Here. And very briefly, people lose track of what a happening that was when that building opened. Everybody who was anybody in the entertainment world, business world, wanted to see that building in those early days, including John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Henry Fonda came to check it out. Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee. So this was quite the thing. And unfortunately, Ebony is no longer there. It got sold. The building is apartments now, although they kept a little bit of the vibe on the inside. Yep. And then now probably it's going to be sold again. So we lose that. But we have to remember that we have that as well.
Oh yeah, no, it was quite a story, and he had to get a white man to pose and stand in for him to even buy the land, much less to build the edifice. And the story of how he got that driveway on Michigan. Matter of fact, I'll tell that story when we come forward. It's an amazing story. Speaking of architecture, I'm sure Lee knows the story, but I'll tell it. This building that Mr. Johnson built, the only black man to own a high-rise on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, also is the only building that has a driveway off of Michigan. It's a fascinating story about the brilliance of black people. I'll tell it when we come forward. Lee Bey on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Hi, I'm Reverend Gerald, host of Urban Family Focus here on KBLA Talk 1580 on Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. In an effort to help reduce the impact of hypertension in our community, Providence is offering free hypertension assessments. The first 30 people to visit KBLA1580.com and use the link or QR code to register will receive 2 tickets to the Amazing Grace Conservatory presentation of Aladdin, a whole new world for real, at the Crenshaw Performing Arts Center, May 25th and 26th. Go to KBLA1580.com right now and be one of the first 30 to register for your hypertension screening and receive 2 tickets to Aladdin, compliments of Providence and KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I'm watching my time, Lee Bey, and I can't do justice to this story, although Mr. Johnson told it to me 1,000 times, because every time I saw him, and I went to the top of the Johnson building to have lunch with him. Again, I would never go to Chicago without spending some time with Mr. Johnson. Love that brother. I'd ask him to tell me these stories over and over. He said, Tavis, I told you them stories 1,000 times. I said, tell me one more time, Mr. Johnson. And he would tell me these stories. If you can get a copy of his book called Succeeding Against the Odds, it's one of the best memoirs I've ever read. Succeeding Against the Odds, the book by John H. Johnson, how he started Ebony and Jet and got his mother to mortgage her furniture for $500. And with that $500, all he bought was stamps, envelopes, and paper. And he wrote a letter that said, a friend of mine told me that you're the kind of discerning Negro who would love to read a magazine that talks about the exploits and the accomplishments of black people. And if you're one of those persons, send me back $2 for a year-long subscription, and I'll send you my magazine when it's published. He hadn't printed nothing yet, but he sent that list out. He got thousands of dollars that came back his way. And that's how he started Ebony and Jet magazines. But he got his mama to mortgage the only thing she owned for $500, and he literally sent out letters with that $500, and the rest, as they say, is history. And he became a huge and very successful businessman. But I love the backstory of John H. Johnson. He becomes so successful that he wants to build this tower. He has this dream to build a tower on Michigan Avenue with all that richness, all the stores, all the iconic buildings that Lee mentioned earlier. He wanted to build his own tower right on Michigan Avenue. He had to get a white guy to buy the land to build the building because they wouldn't let Negroes anywhere near Michigan Avenue back in the day. He builds this building, and he's as the architects are designing the building, and you mentioned the architect, black architect, as they're trying to design this building, Mr. Johnson had early on arthritis. And Chicago gets bitterly cold. That's why they call it the Windy City, right there on the lakefront. It gets bitterly cold, and he was trying to figure out a way to build a underground garage in the Johnson building. Long story short, you can't do that. The traffic on Michigan is so backed up already. It's so bad even back then. You cannot have a driveway entrance off of Michigan Avenue because it backs up the traffic. There is no building on Michigan Avenue that has one of those driveways. It's part of the city ordinance. You can't do it. Mr. Johnson asked to see a copy of the ordinance. They sent it to him. He read that thing over and over and over again. He talked to old man Daly, the mayor, to say, Mr. Daly, can't you make an exception for me? He said, John, I can't do it. Nobody else has an entrance off of Michigan, and you can't have one either. He studied that ordinance over and over and over again. And what he finally realized, Lee Bey, as you know, he read the fine print. It said you cannot have an entrance off of Michigan Avenue. It did not say you could not have an exit off of Michigan Avenue. And he found that loophole, and the Johnson building for all these years is still the only building on Michigan Avenue with a driveway off of Michigan Avenue. I digress. That's the brilliance of a black man named John H. Johnson who never went to college. Our remaining moments with Lee Bey when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Charles Barkley in a pickup game.
We'll take Barkley.
Ha! First pick. Sorry, kids.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision?
Okay, here's the plan. Pass me the ball every time.
This is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over. And if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and longtime Chicago architecture critic Lee Bey. Got less than 5 minutes here. I want to cover a couple of things with Lee now that I've shared that story that I promised I'd share about Mr. Johnson. What an amazing genius he was. 2 things, Lee, in these few minutes. The architecture that you talk about in your book on the south side of Chicago really is a frame, not just for discussing architecture on the black side, the south side of Chicago, but across the country. I worry that in these black spaces, the architecture that exists there doesn't get the respect or attention it deserves.
Well, it's really the case, and it's a tough thing. And I wrestled with this while writing the book. I wanted to lift up this architecture, but then I was fearful that if it got too much attention, then the kind of the forces of gentrification could slip in and displace people.
Right.
Not that one book could do that, but I didn't want to be a part of a string that ends up doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to explain that when you see neighborhoods that are not doing as well as they oughta, that there are financial forces beyond the scope of the people who live there that contribute to that. Like, for instance, how appraisers will underappraise homes in black areas. So I had to get all that in there, but that really is a national story. You just said on your own newscast earlier that Detroit now, that there's a bump up in the retail and the residential housing value in Detroit that's put, like, I think the story said $2 billion more wealth in black people's pockets there. That's the thing. So if it goes that way, it can put money in pockets. We also know that it's gone the other way. It seems like Detroit and robbed black people of that kind of money.
Yep. No, powerful point. To Baltimore and this bridge that we all know that collapsed and was hit by a freighter. There are people on the right politically suggesting that DE&I is the reason that bridge came down. The governor Westmore said, "I ain't got time for foolishness," but it's not just an indictment on DE&I. It's ultimately an indictment on architecture. But how do you read it, Lee? Though that crazy suggestion that DE&I is what brought that bridge down.
But they could never say how. Just because black folk are in charge, they blame it on us. But that shift is 987 feet long. So the skyscrapers we talked about, John Hancock building especially, it's as long as those buildings are tall, and it's stacked to the brim. That kind of weight moving, hitting anything, will rip it up. We could talk about, could there have been barriers? Could there have been this? But they were built to a standard when these bridges were. That was the standard, and ships weren't that big and heavy at the time. And now things change. But to blame it on black people, it's sad and then typical at the same time.
Nope, that's what happens. That is what happens. Shout out the name of your book one more time, Lee Bey.
Southern Exposure: The Overlooked Architecture of Chicago's South Side.
That's the name of Lee's book. I recommend that. Lee, I enjoyed this conversation immensely. I say all the time that I always leave this studio smarter every day when I walk out than I was when I came in. And I think at our best on this program, we try to expose people to a variety of things. I talk about so many different subject matter on any given day, on any given week. And I hope that in the process, we are, as I say all the time, making our audience the smartest person in their circle of friends. I've enjoyed this conversation about architecture in this hour, and I thank you for being the person that made it possible. All the best to you, my friend. Stay strong.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Good to have you on. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.